Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, December 23rd, 2020, and today we're going to be talking about the long shot election reversal that Mike Pence and Donald Trump have been eyeing up for quite some time now. Looking at the entire right-wing media source, they have completely moved past the Electoral College. They have completely moved past the court cases, and they are now moving on to the congressional certification of the 2020 election results. And essentially, what they are trying to do is push congressional members to not certify the election results in 5 specific states, and as a response would certify Republican electors that did cast their ballots, sent them to the congressional building, and calling on Mike Pence to not officially determine the election results as Joe Biden's victory. Now, that's something that seems very far-fetched. This actually was brought up by Democrats in 2017, 2001, and 2005. So both of Bush's terms and also the 2016 election. However, there has never been a major political party candidate in the past 100 years who has forcefully objected to the election results, has called on congressional members to vote against the certification of the election results. And January 6th seems to be a date that has been circulating around the right-wing side of the media, mainly because it's a date where Mike Pence will ultimately have to decide if Joe Biden wins the election. What do I mean by that? The president of the Senate certifies the Electoral College results. If Mike Pence doesn't do that, then Joe Biden technically will not have won the election. But it's not that simple. If you actually go through the details of what would actually need to occur, essentially, both a Democratic Congress and a Republican Senate would have to agree to throw out the votes in a certain state. So let's take Pennsylvania, for example. Let's say the Democratic Party defies their intentions that they've clearly expressed before, defies the wishes of their constituents, and decides to throw out the ballots in Pennsylvania. Let's say there was actually proof of voter fraud. And of course, the Senate, the Republican-controlled Senate, would be obliged to follow through. Well, then you take out Pennsylvania. What happens from there? Essentially, since this was thrown out, it would be up to, there would be a couple more things to go through, but essentially, ultimately, what the Republican Party is hoping for, let's just say this is the Trump strategy, they're hoping that the Republican electors, which did cast their ballots in Pennsylvania, they did cast their ballots in a number of battleground states, even New Mexico. Essentially, they were just doing it for whatever reason. It counts for absolutely nothing. It's not the official certified electoral college votes. I don't know why they did it. It was just more so a saving face within the state's GOP. But looking at Pennsylvania, if this was the case, essentially they're expecting Mike Pence to accept the Republican electors instead, assuming that the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives and the Republican-controlled Senate agree to throw out Pennsylvania. They agree to throw out Pennsylvania, and they agree to delegitimize the election results in that state, and then therefore Mike Pence would accept the Republican electors. And you can see how many hoops that the Republican Party would have to jump through in order for this to happen. This is not something where Mike Pence can just walk into the United States Senate, see the 306 to 232 number, and then ultimately declare Donald Trump the president. That's not how it works. The Constitution outlines that the Senate, or not necessarily the Senate, Congress does have to certify the election results, but there is a much more meticulous process than just the president of the Senate declaring that Donald Trump won the election. Otherwise, Joe Biden would have been free to walk into the Senate in 2017 and say, you know what, I think Hillary Clinton should have won the election, therefore she's won. There's never been a time period also, there's never been an election in the past 100 years onward where both chambers have agreed to throw out a certain state's election results. That has never happened. Never once has that happened in the past 100 years. So it's going to be very difficult to see how that could happen now, especially since the Democrats control the House of Representatives. You would need a lot of crossover vote. You would need a lot of crossover vote to actually say, no, Joe Biden did not win this election. And also, we haven't seen any firm Republican stances from the Senate on this issue. We've seen a representative, Mo Brooks from Alabama. You may recognize his name because he ran for Senate back in 2017 in that special election, ended up losing the Republican primary, but now is back to being a representative. But looking at him, he seems to be one of the most diehard Trump loyalists in the entire House of Representatives, and he's calling on the delegitimization of some of these battleground states, 5 to be in specific. He's the one leading this effort, and he is calling on Republican electors in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Georgia, and get this, looking at, not Michigan, he's not calling on Michigan, surprisingly. I may have missed that, but I'm surprised that I did not see Michigan here. Yeah, along with a group of allies in the House, he's eyeing challenges to the election results in 5 different states. I was kind of interested that he did not include Michigan, but the final state is actually Nevada. Nevada, out of all states, I guess because it was closer than Michigan, but realistically, I don't think that's. I don't see why. I've actually seen some right-wing sources say the election results without fraud would still give Joe Biden 243 electoral votes with this map. So I guess I can see where they're getting these 5 states from in the House of Representatives, but I don't know who chose Nevada out of all of the states. I don't get why. It doesn't really make sense. Michigan would have been a much easier argument to make, but none of these arguments are easy to make. Let me not say that. Easier in comparison to an already crazy sounding argument. But Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, essentially this representative is trying to throw out these election results, invalidate the Democratic electors, invalidate the fact that Joe Biden did fairly win these states, and officially declare the Republican electors certified, and officially declare that these Republican electors will be the ones allowed to vote. And this would just have to go through the Democratic Party, would have to go through the Republican Party when we've seen Mitt Romney, we've seen Lisa Murkowski, we've seen Susan Collins in the Senate already admit, or I hate to use that word because you should never have to admit that someone won this far out, but I guess you could say admit that Joe Biden did win the presidency. They are acknowledging a president-elect Biden. They are acknowledging a vice president-elect Kamala Harris. And it seems as if, while they may be saying that, some other Republicans in the background are discussing the possibility of Mike Pence trying to subvert the election process. And I think this largely has to do with the fact that Mike Pence is absolutely eyeing up a 2024 presidential bid. Absolutely. He's the vice president to one of the most popular presidents amongst the Republican Party. And I mean that. Donald Trump's approval rating may be underwater, but that's amongst independents and Democrats. The Republican Party loves him. We know that. Mike Pence would have a very easy time winning in 2024 if Donald Trump chooses not to run because he was Donald Trump's VP. Look at Joe Biden. And when you're looking at the polling data without Donald Trump added into the equation, Mike Pence takes the lead. He gets 20 to 20%. He gets 44% of the vote. He gets 30% of the vote, 31%, 26%. So he is always taking the lead. He always takes the lead when Donald Trump is not on the ballot, or any variant of Donald Trump. One of the family members, Donald Trump Jr., ties with Mike Pence. But Mike Pence is absolutely eyeing up a 2024 bid. He is absolutely going to try to spin whatever he does, whether it's try to delegitimize the election results or pretty much confirm that Joe Biden wins, because he wants to run for president one day. We see it in him. It's absolutely there. I will not be shocked one bit if he chooses to run in 2024. I'd be extremely shocked if he chooses not to run. In fact, when he was speaking to a Turning Point USA crowd down in West Palm Beach, Florida, he told them that they should stay in the fight. They should stay in the fight to continue fighting for everything that they've accomplished. And also ended off his speech by saying the best days of conservatives are ahead. The best days for conservative values are ahead. And that sort of indicates that Mike Pence is looking to the future. But if he recognizes a Joe Biden victory on January 6th, the entire Republican Party starts crumbling down. Because if we went through this timeline for the Republican Party, first, it was that the state governors were going to overturn the election results. That didn't happen. Then it was the states not certifying the election results. That didn't happen. Then it was the courts. That didn't happen. Then it was the Supreme Court. That didn't happen. Then it was faithless electors. That certainly didn't happen. And then it went on now to discussion of January 6th, 2021, because that's when Mike Pence will have to certify a Joe Biden victory. And if Mike Pence does want a political future in the Republican Party, he should do absolutely nothing. And what I mean by that is resign as vice president and save face. But no matter what he does, he is going to lose a wing from the traditional Republican Party in terms of support in the primary, or he's going to lose the Trump wing. I think he's better off keeping the Trump wing, but for America's sake, I hope he does not try to delegitimize these election results. Because for me, it seems as if Donald Trump is trying to subvert the election results. That's how it seems to a lot of people. A lot of people do believe that Donald Trump won the election. But that's dangerous to think about, because there is absolutely no evidence presented that backs up that claim. So looking at all of these failed attempts by the Trump wing of the Republican Party, this is their final attempt. And Mike Pence truly has no power. No matter how much they want him to throw out the electors in Arizona, throw out the electors in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Nevada, and Georgia, it's not going to happen. Because yes, it has to go through Congress, But both chambers will have to agree to throw out these election results. On top of that, we've already seen Republicans acknowledge that Joe Biden won the election. You can't publicly say Joe Biden won the election and then try to delegitimize the tens of millions of voters across all 5 states. People wouldn't stand for it. Even Republicans would not stand for that. You can't publicly say one thing and then vote differently. Plenty of politicians do it, but there is so much attention on this presidential race that I realistically think that if any Republican, really any Republican, other than maybe a few in very solid states, we're looking at Oklahoma, we're looking at Tommy Tuberville in Alabama, whatever. But for any of the other Republicans that are in moderately competitive races, if they do choose to back delegitimizing the election results, they may seal their own fates with that move. Because it's not going to be super popular if you're running for re-election in Wisconsin, which Senator Ron Johnson, who's up in 2022, has been open to the idea of not certifying the election results if he chooses to not do so. If he chooses to vote against the legitimate results of this election, then he will probably pay the consequence. I don't think that all of these Republicans, if they vote in unison, if they vote all together, that Joe Biden won the election, I don't think all of them will be too much in trouble. I don't think all of them are going to see huge primary opposition. Because if they're all voting one way, could you really blame them for not wanting to be the oddball within their political party? But if Trump's wing of the Republican Party is able to convince a number of these Republicans and it starts to gain traction, that's when it could start getting dangerous for American democracy. But since there is Susan Collins, and since there is Lisa Murkowski, and since there is going to be David Perdue won't be in the Senate, and Brian Kemp can't appoint someone in between that time period, so he won't be in the Senate, David Perdue. And also, all of these Republicans who have started to say Joe Biden won the election, I can't imagine that they would say that the election results should not be solidified. If they've already acknowledged it, it doesn't really make sense because they've already ticked off a very, big portion of their Republican base. But moving forward, if all the Republicans agree with it, they can't primary them all. They're going to try, but they can't primary them all. So overall, how much power does Mike Pence have? The answer is probably not a lot. Unless the Democratic House decides to vote with the Republican Party and decides to vote against Joe Biden, absolutely nothing is going to happen. And also, even if the Democratic Party wanted to do so, the Republican Senate isn't exactly on board with this. 60% of House Republicans did back the effort to go to the Supreme Court to pretty much sue a number of states for holding their elections outside of the constitutional boundaries that they have set. But also in the Senate, we don't see really too much support from a number of senators, barely anything. I think the only type of discussion really has come from Tommy Tuberville. Other than that, we haven't seen too many Republicans come out and say, you know what, I think that we should challenge this in Congress. And January 6th seems to be a day that a lot of conservatives and members of the right wing are starting to count down towards, but it's just going to be another failed attempt, just as it was in the Supreme Court, just as it was in the state courts, just as it was to the governorships, just as it was to the Republican-controlled legislatures, just as it was to the Electoral College. There are so many things that the Trump wing of the Republican Party has tried to do, and none of it has worked so far. And this is their Hail Mary last-ditch effort on January 6th. But realistically, it looks as if they're not even looking into how this process would occur, because Mike Pence has no power. And Mike Pence is more than likely going to certify that Joe Biden won the election because he realistically does not have any other option. And that probably will seal his fate for a 2024 presidential bid, but it's inevitable. Even if Mike Pence tries to deny the election results, he's probably going to lose some support amongst Republicans. The majority of Americans believe the election is over. 60% of Americans believe the election is over. That may not seem like a lot, but given the fact that Donald Trump won the most votes out of any Republican in United States history, and a very significant portion of them do believe the election is over, I can't imagine it would help Mike Pence if he only continues this long and grueling election that seemingly has been going on practically forever. I mean, it was supposed to end November 3rd, ended up ending November 7th. And then we've gone through this long time period where we're still discussing potential pathways that Donald Trump is trying to take to win the presidency. But nothing has worked so far, and I don't think that this congressional certification is going to be any different. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my post-2020 election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.